The Miami Dolphins are moving to a new chapter. They are entering rebuild mode, as I think we can all assume. They let go of some key players, and they're rumored to let go of some more players. They obviously last week cut, I think, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubbs, James Daniels, and Nick Westbrook-Akine are the four names they cut. And then obviously now everyone is pointing fingers at Tua as the next guy to potentially be off the team for Miami. Braden, what are your thoughts on these moves by the Dolphins?
Uh, it's kind of weird, you know. Like it makes sense to kind of move off of these bad contracts. Some of these aren't even like horrible contracts. The Tua one is not great, but that's the one that they've actually held on to. My thing is, if you're gonna hit the self destruct button, be like, all right, what we have right now has not worked, will not work. Let's move on. Cut these guys. Why do you still have the head? Oh no, you don't have the head coach. You have Jeff
Nope.
Hafley.
Yeah.
Why was I thinking they still have Mike McDaniel? No, he's the
No.
OC of the Chargers.
Well, it's
Okay,
good.
well that
To be fair, like
we're
out
3
of
minutes
all the
in.
head coaching stuff
Oh,
that happened, I mean, this was like you said, me and you did not really care for this hire just because we didn't know a lot about Halfley to begin with, and then none of us really thought McDaniel was actually going to get fired. So, but you continue.
I'm 3 minutes in and I just pulled that goof. All right, comments gonna love that one.
Yeah,
Anyways, well, the last like 30 seconds just erase that from your head. I didn't say that. That
yeah.
was
The
that
power
was
of editing, it's gone.
that was computer generated. I don't know what that
Yeah,
was. This is the right decision to move on from an era that simply did not work. You tried to win something, it didn't happen. Move on. Nothing really that they cut was really any sort of long term option, so it makes sense. Tua is kind of like that in the middle. Like he's not the worst quarterback ever, but he's not worth the 55 million a year his contract would be. So it would make sense if they wanted to move on from him, but they're not going to get trade value for him with that contract. But he's too good of a player to simply just cut ties with completely and get nothing back.
yeah. If the Dolphins end up cutting Tua, that would uh, leave the Dolphins on the hook for 99 million in dead cap over the next
Yeah,
two
you can't do
seasons.
that. That's a punt of a season if I've ever heard one.
Yeah,
They do have
and
their pick this year, right?
yeah,
I
they
think so.
pick.
Or like next year.
Yeah, they have all their picks, I believe.
Okay, so if there's a draft you're going to punt for, 2027 is not a bad one, but like there are no quarterbacks there. So if you're going to get rid of Tua, who are you going to replace him
Yeah.
with?
They currently have the 11th pick in the draft, so just outside the top 10. So still a pretty high uh, pick. But now, obviously, they moved on from Tyreek. I thought they cut Bradley Chubb, but I must not have been official as I'm looking on their salary cap page. Um,
It may be a post June 6th cut or whatever,
Potentially. I
or
know
June
there's been
1st maybe.
talks of them potentially shopping Minka Fitzpatrick. Jalen Waddle has been in rumors as well. It just seems like this era of the Miami Dolphins is officially over. They had a couple decent seasons. Obviously, they had one season where they lost. I think Skylar Thompson started a game in the playoffs against the Bills, and they lost in a shootout to the Bills. And then they had the infamous like negative 30-degree game in Arrowhead where no one on the Dolphins offense could get anything going, and they dropped that one. But that's, I mean, other than them scoring 70 on the Broncos, that first like 3 or 4 games that they had of this
Yeah.
iteration, there's not really anything to write home about with this era of the Miami Dolphins. So they decide to pack it up and potentially move on. Do you think that Tua is going to be their starter week one?
I mean, he's on the roster right now, so if he's on the roster, he will be. There's I'd give it about a 55% chance he actually is on that roster. So more likely than not, but I would not be surprised in the slightest if he is gone.
See, I'm not super like into the cap stuff, but I wonder if there's like a stretch. You know, like how the NBA, there's like a stretch and wave, kind of like what the Bucks did with Damian Lillard, where they cut him and then they just the money that they owed him over the next 4 or 5 years, they stretched it out. I wonder if the Dolphins could do something like that with Tua, and it'll allow Tua to potentially find a new home. I'm not saying Tua is going to be like an all pro or anything, but I think he could still be a quarterback, a
It's
middle of the
it's
road
kind of the
quarterback.
same situation as when Denver cut Russ, where they're
Right.
just kind of on the hook for that contract, and now they're paying 50 something million to a quarterback that doesn't play for them.
Right. And Denver struggled, I think, the first season of that contract, and then the second season they ended up, I think, making the playoffs against Buffalo. So, not saying that that'll happen for Miami, but certainly something to watch out for. I'm trying to pull up the exact stuff of his contract. So he's on the hook for his cap number is 56 million this year, 53 million next year, and 65 million in 2028. And there's 2 extra void years on that contract. So it's just an absolute brutal contract if you're the Dolphins at this point, because now you are in, I would say, full rebuild mode. Wouldn't you say that's kind of the
Yeah.
direction they're
At
pointing
this
towards?
point, the white flag has been waved.
And even with all these moves, as of right now, they have $3 million in salary cap space. So
Ugh.
they can't even be like, hey, we're going to be big spenders in free agency. We're going to retool. They are literally just going to have to suck this year, potentially suck next year before they can actually start competing again, because they're on the hook for $73 million of dead money this season.
Yeah. There's an NBA discourse that this kind of reminds me of a bit with the whole Tua situation. I believe they call it what the Paulo Banchero dilemma, where it's like, would you rather draft with the first overall pick a guy that is like borderline all star, like maybe could be the guy, but you don't really know, but is showing enough flashes to be like, all right, well, we got to at least see what we got. Or would you rather draft, like, I guess in NFL terms, like a Zach Wilson, where he pretty much immediately shows, yeah, no, this guy's a bum. Maybe a bum is a little bit harsh, but like, let's be real. His Zach Wilson's
No, but
NFL
I get
career
what
has
you're
not been
saying.
great. So this is really going to raise a lot of questions. Like, would you rather draft a guy like Tua, where it's like he's going to show flashes, but whether it be his fault or not, just hasn't really been able to put it fully together, or would you rather draft the Zachary Risache, where it kind of just looks like it's pretty clear from the jump he's just not the guy?
Me personally, I would do the route of the Zach Wilson style, because at least you know early on it's like this isn't going to work out. Because we've reached kind of an era with quarterbacks. Even if you are the 18th best quarterback in the league, if you are a young quarterback, you're going to get 50 plus million dollars. Like that's just what we're at anymore. Right now there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players, 11 quarterbacks, I should say, are above that $50 million APY. 11.
Ooh.
And that's not even including Mahomes, who's on the outside of that list. Where's some other important names? Sam Darnold, who just won the Super Bowl, is outside of that list. I mean, not even including some of the upper echelon of quarterbacks are in that top 10. Guys that kind of fit that Tua mold are like Trevor Lawrence, where it's like, hey, Trevor's been good, but he's had seasons where he's just been flat out bad. Jordan Love is the biggest roller coaster in the NFL. He either is an all pro quarterback or
Cat
he just
agrees enthusiastically with what you're saying
yeah,
right now.
or he just doesn't. He looks like he should be benched in favor of Malik Willis, like last season, in a couple spots. It. I would assume that we're gonna reach. We're at the apex of quarterback contracts. I think we're gonna start to see him return to the mean. If that makes sense. Where some of these middle of the pack guys aren't getting these huge, enormous contracts right now, because it's ridiculous. It puts these teams like Miami in such difficult situations where even if you don't know if that's the guy, you have to pay him. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on Miami this offseason, because it sounds like they're going to be letting go of a lot of their star players. And they still have good players on their roster, but I would expect Miami to be in contention for the number one pick this upcoming, or I guess 2027, potentially 2028. But any other thoughts on Miami, Braden?
Not really. The only other thing I maybe had to tag onto this is like this Tua contract is going to be like obviously a lot different circumstances, but this is going to be kind of like the Deshaun Watson situation where it's like you now see this in hindsight, and it's like they gave him that all of the money guaranteed, and now you do not see fully guaranteed contracts anymore. You're going to see situations where it's like these quarterbacks that are like good but not great, haven't quite proven that they're the guy, but they look good enough to where they look like they're worth a second shot. You're going to see a lot more teams that are a lot more gun shy to pull the trigger on giving them that top 10, top 15 money.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Like I said, you're going to see a lot more teams push for that $40 million year number because that puts you in contention with like Baker Mayfield and his salary. And the Buccaneers, they've been up and down, but they've been good over the last few years. And obviously, the example of all, Sam Darnold, with his cap number only being at 33.5 million. Granted, Sam was kind of like a question mark when the Seattle signed him to that deal because they didn't know if the Minnesota season was like a one-off. But Sam certainly proved his worth to Seattle and his worth as an NFL quarterback. So we will keep a tab on the Miami Dolphins. I expect them to be one of the more interesting teams this offseason. But staying on the Dolphins-ish news, with some of the cuts, Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb are now free agents. Obviously, with stuff that's being thrown out there, there's been speculation that Tyreek Hill could potentially find himself back in Kansas City or back with another contender. Braden, I want your thoughts. Where do you think Tyreek Hill is going to end up signing?
I mean, if it's not with the Chiefs, it's just going to be probably retirement. I could definitely see that. It seemed like that was kind of a lot of the buzz when he ended up going down with that. I think it was an ACL. But it kind of seems like he's made his money. He's satisfied with his career. I would not be surprised if he just hangs it up. But if he doesn't, it's probably either the Chiefs or I mean, I don't know. It feels like a lot of like the receiver needy teams are just teams that's like you can't see because of the Chiefs ties. You just cannot see Tyreek Hill going there. Like when I think of receiver needy teams, I think of like the Bills and like the Niners. Not
Yeah,
he's not going to either of those teams. It's just not happening.
no.
Let's be real. So it's probably either the Chiefs or nowhere. That's where it rings for me.
I agree with you, but I will throw out a sleeper team that makes a lot of sense when you think about it on paper. The Chargers make a bit too much sense if Kansas City were to like decide not to sign him because you're going back with Mike McDaniel, who was your head coach at Miami, who's now the OC with the Chargers. You going to play with Justin Herbert, who is one of the strongest arm QBs in the league, where you could zip the ball down the field. You have other receivers around you where it make your job a little bit easier. Lad McConkey has been good the last two seasons. Quentin Johnston has been the biggest roller coaster wide receiver in the NFL since he entered the league. And what if they decide to keep Keenan Allen? That's even another weapon. But while I do agree, I think it's Kansas City or nothing. If if there was a third door, I think the Chargers make an interesting amount of sense for Tyreek Hill. But it all depends. That injury he dealt with, it was a week 5, week 4 he tore. I think it was his ACL, LCL, and MCL. I think it was a clean tear of all the CLs in his knee. And I saw a thing that he needs another surgery in the next few weeks to repair something in his knee. So if you are a team interested in Hill, it's probably not going to be until, I would say, end of September by the time he's ready to go. Because a complete tear like that in the knee certainly is like a year-long recovery. And that'll put him right around the 1 year timetable. So we will see.
Yeah, especially for a guy like Tyreek Hill, where I mean, he's not just a speed guy, obviously, but between speed and like his route running, a lot of that is the knees. You need to be able to have like solid foundation with your legs to be able to move around like that. So coming off of a major injury like that, who's to say that he ever is even like 75% of the player Tyreek Hill ever was, which granted, 75% of Tyreek Hill is probably still at least a
Right.
wide receiver 2 on the Chargers. But
Yeah.
it kind of raises the question, does Tyreek Hill want to come back if he's only 75% of himself?
Yeah, that's the thing that none of us will have the answer to, and only Tyreek Hill will know that. Uh, but like I was talking to one of my buddies, and I was said, I if Tyreek Hill signs with someone, it's not going to be, in my opinion, till like July when teams can figure out how healthy that knee actually is. It would be foolish for teams to think that, or for fans to think that teams are going to sign him next month when free agency opens, because technically he's been a free agent for the last week and a half. And maybe he wants to drag this out, maybe he doesn't. But I would find it a bit odd if a team commits actual like salary cap space this early on in the offseason when they don't know how that knee is going to heal and how he's going to recover from that injury. Where do you think that Bradley Chubb, he's the other big name that got cut from Miami, where do you think Bradley Chubb could potentially end up?
He's another interesting one where it's like you kind of have a bit of an injury concern with that. It seems like he's never really truly been able to string together a healthy couple seasons. But I mean, I like the Ravens could be really interesting, I think. Just like generally teams that are pretty high up in the championship race most of the time, but they kind of just seem to be an edge rusher away. And maybe not even the Ravens as much anymore. It kind of seems like they have decent options there, but I think Chubb, if he's healthy, could be a big upgrade over that. Depending on if Bosa resigns with the Bills, that could be interesting.
True.
Where else? I mean, the Lions could be fun, maybe.
Would a reunion back in Denver make sense?
That
I
could
know they
also be fun.
I
They
know they
kind of
already have.
also seem to have their guys.
Yeah, but man, you can never have enough pass rushers. That, in
True.
my opinion, like you would know as a Niners fan, that first iteration of the Niners when they went to the Super Bowl in 2019, they hung their hat on, hey, we have like six legitimate pass rushers off the edge, not even including the interior. It's like we have Bosa, we have D4, we have Eric Armstead. We could throw all these guys to potentially get pressure. So maybe Denver makes a little bit of sense. I will say it's the first time in his NFL career since his rookie year that he played all 17 games. He had the third most sacks in his career last season at 8.5. So had a healthy season last year. So if you're a team signing him, that's definitely a plus. But yeah, I wouldn't hang my hat on being that being the biggest free agency signing for his team this offseason. But I like all the teams that you mentioned for sure. Anything else to add on Bradley Chubb's next potential team?
Um, not really.
Okay.
It just kind of seems like a team that is looking for either like a rotational guy or just and they just for sure need help. I mean, even like the Niners probably wouldn't be a horrible option. The problem is, like, you think about the Niners edge rush room, which honestly, I thought when you mentioned being the Niners, I thought you were going to mention how we had like 4 or 5 edge rushers go down this year. So
True.
it's tough to think about the Niners edge rush room because it's like you think about it where it was we were out there running like Yeturgros Matos and like Sam whatever his name was, I don't even know, out there off the edge. But it's like, no, we have Nick Bosa, Michael Williams, like other guys that can rush the passer. It's not necessarily a big need right now.
Hmm.
What we need is a training staff that can actually carry their weight in anything.
Right.
But yeah, I would look for any team that is like they're close, but they just need a little bit more help off the edge to be like, hey, here's like 2 years, about I don't know, 15-ish million a year.
Yeah, that's right about the
Come
number I
help us
thought.
help us put some pressure on the quarterback.
The team I think that makes the most sense in my head that you said, Baltimore, makes a lot of sense because that was their weakness this year. They, I think, were dead last or bottom 5 in sacks. So they can add another guy
Okay.
off the yeah, if they can add another guy off the edge to potentially get pressure, make it easier for that Ravens defense. think that's only going to help out more for a team like that.